This is the Total Perspective Vortex. I'm Tragula.
And I'm Christian.
It's July 13th, 2020. It's a Monday. It's another Monday's Writing Room, Christian, and I think you've prepared one of your legendary jingles for us.
Legendary, yes, that's the adjective I'd use.
Tragula's trying to figure stuff out in the writer's room. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That works.
Does it?
It does something. But I am trying to figure stuff out. And we had our first inaugural guest interview, or I guess a guest discussion would probably be a better term because it wasn't so much of an interview,
Right.
with Carl Benjamin Sargon of the Cad over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. And you know, based on the discussion we're having this morning, you made him flinch a little bit when you said something.
Yeah. I think I've made you flinch about it too, and
for sure.
It's and this is why I've bumped it up in my TPV in 5 minutes queue. Is like just dealing with this issue of compassion and wisdom as virtues and vices, right? So right. I got a sexy working title for the video I'm going with now. Is like twin virtues, twin vices.
Okay.
Okay. I like it.
So, do you want to repeat the sentence you said to Sargon that made probably a lot of people flinch?
Oh well, I was talking about how people on the extreme left have an excessive compassion, and then I said, well, but also people on the extreme right have an excessive of wisdom, is what I used,
right?
And I was using it in the understanding that all virtues can become vices, and what it is it's they're overly bound to one of these virtues which are in opposition, and they're overly bound to one of these virtues that are in opposition, and as a result, the system goes out of whack, right?
Right. So the claim was, and that it's good to provide that context, right? Obviously, because I don't want to just say this next part, but so the claim was that Hitler or the Nazi regime
would have had. Looks like.
Go
ahead.
Would have had an excess of wisdom, or wisdom out of balance. So that necessitates a kind of a discussion and maybe some clarification there.
Well, it's interesting that I think that you phrased it that way, because I think you may have picked up. I used a Mussolini quote to define fascism.
Right.
So
sorry,
actually,
fascism, not Nazism. That's
yes. Right. And not that Nazism isn't a form of fascism. It is.
Right.
But I find it interesting that you sort of and I guess it's important because other viewers that I don't think Hitler actually ever made it anywhere into the conversation, but
you're right. It was Mussolini. It was fascism, and there is a distinction to be made between Nazism and fascism.
I don't know about that. I'm saying that it's. I think Nazism is a form of fascism.
Nazism is a form of fascism. That is true, but they're not the same. Like Mussolini's fascism and Nazism do have many distinctions. Right.
Okay. Well,
but anyway,
I definitely both. Both
are not good.
Both are not good, and both are. I think what they are pursuing. Wisdom as a vice.
Okay.
Right, because virtues can become vices when taken to excess. Right, this is the idea of a fallen angel. Is like that. If you look at like the seven deadly sins, for example, are all like in Catholicism are all vices. but you could see that they all have virtuous, tempered counterparts, right? So,
Okay.
like for example, gluttony, like you have to eat,
That's right.
right? So you can't just, oh, I'm not going to engage in. You would be missing the mark in another way if you just completely stopped eating because you didn't want to engage in gluttony.
Right.
Right.
Right. I see what you're saying.
And same with like lust, like if they're not having any, if there's no lust, there's no kids at some level, right? So that you can't, as just two examples, there is a strong relationship with virtues and vices, and vices actually being the excess of virtues. So maybe there is a word that I have yet to find for the sin or the vice of wisdom taken to an excess and compassion taken to an excess.
Interesting. Okay. Those would be two useful words that we would need.
Yeah. It'd
be interesting to.
I mean,
pull up some old Greek or Latin and formulate some words there.
Yeah, but it's it would be, and that would be what I would be charging the fascists and the communists with if I had those words. So it would be the vice of wisdom, would be the wisdom, or wisdom taken to a vice would be what the fascists are engaged in. And compassion taken to a vice is what the communists are engaged in.
Okay. So did we want to flesh that out a little bit?
Yeah, I mean we could, so we can explore then what those things we can explore then what those things look like.
Okay.
Let's start with the wisdom side because we were already talking about wisdom. So wisdom, when taken to an excess, like one of the excesses of wisdom is the ends justifying the means. So the vice version of wisdom. So let's say the vice of wisdom when I'm using this. The vice of wisdom is the ends justifies the means. And this is something that you've seen various prohibitions on in narratives and stories. We talk about this, where it's like, okay, like examples where this might come up is if you had like an infected population of people with a disease, and it could explode into a global pandemic. So you just burn the whole city down.
Right.
Right. So that would be an example of the possible excess. So there is an argument there. There's a cold calculating this will bring about the ends that we want, which is to stop the pandemic.
Right.
Right. So that's,
but it might not be tempered by compassion there.
Yeah, there's no compassion or temperament of compassion there. And so that's one form, but there's also the other vice.
So we shouldn't be burning down nursing homes, is what you're saying.
Yeah, to stop
during. Okay.
Yeah,
to stop the spread of the corona.
Yeah, okay. yeah, right. Basically, so it's like we shouldn't just be like leaving the elderly to that's actually another one. It's just like euthanasia at 65 or something, right? Oh, they're no more used to society, so let's just send them to the gas chambers or something. These are real extremes because I'm just trying to show where the vice can be, and there's ways in your life that you can act without compassion to yourself too, because look at these things I'm talking. They echo at different realms, so there might be ways that where there's a vice of wisdom in your life as well, where you may have maybe unreasonable, like on an individual level, unreasonable expectations that you for yourself that you're not attaining. For example, you may want to lose weight, so you say, well, I'm not going to eat. You go on some crazy diet where you're fasting for 2 weeks. Right. And it's just, it's actually doing more damage than good. So you're pursuing this goal of losing weight, but doing horrible damage to your body in the process.
Right.
The other aspect of wisdom as a vice is tyrannical following of the rules, right? Without exception.
Okay.
So if you, what's an example of this? Well, let's say that there is, well, let's use like there's a law, thou shalt not kill, but you're put in this situation, and the punishment for it is death, and you're put in this situation where you have to defend your life or your family against someone who's trying to kill you, and then you kill in self-defense. Well, in this formulation of that law, there's no exception for that. So then you have to be put to death.
Right. To be clear, just from a Christian perspective, is you're not allowed to murder. So there is a distinction that's made there. But Dennis Prager has a good book on the commandments, but I see what you're saying.
I am not accusing the Christians of being fascists.
I'll just put that out there.
But I'm just saying that's how you could make it into a tyrannizing rule outside of, and if you wanted to use wisdom as only the virtue and say that there is a vice that exists beyond wisdom, I would, instead of just saying an excessive wisdom, I would go with that. And maybe we do need a word for it. But that's what I'm talking about, is that excess. So let's do the other side now. So we also have on the other side compassion, right? And compassion is the virtue that reigns in wisdom. So in all those situations, and I made them life and death because I was looking for extremes. Right. But in all those situations, you could see where that compassion needed to be tempered, right? So and actually is a good example. Like the virtue of compassion is fixing the law so they actually are more in order with reality and how they should be. So your case for the Christians is actually the prohibition is on murder. This is a good example of compassion, well-oriented compassion, saying it's like, okay, so we have this simple law like thou shalt not kill, but we need to put in an exception for extraneous situations. Right. Right. And
so that's one historical example of a popular Christian is Bonhoeffer's attempt to assassinate Hitler, that he felt it was his Christian duty to help with. Right. So there are kind of those exceptions. Okay.
Right. Yeah, but I wanted to keep it really planned murder. But my where I was going with it was like self-defense is the kind of exception to the law that actually makes brings things more into balance and actually makes the rule wisdom more of a virtue by being pulled by compassion, right? So compassion provides these exceptions. Or you could also think of like the example of a forced march, where you're trying to get to some place as quickly as possible, but you're leaving people behind in the process. Compassion sort of like, okay, no, we need to accommodate, we need to move as a group. So even though some of us could move faster on our own, it's better for us to move as a group in the long run. So compassion then tempers the wisdom of just trying to get there as fast as possible to say, okay, no, we can do this together and it will be better. That balance of needs of doing things, attaining our goals in the most efficient way possible versus adjusting our expectations for the reality of the situation and seeing how the system or the rules we have in place are not actually serving the ends or optimally serving the ends that we want to bring about is the role of compassion. So, but compassion can become a vice when the vice of compassion is taking things, seeing the whole system in contempt, right? Or denying the goal is worthy endeavor at all, is part of that. Right. But there's also this aspect of delusion and deceit that is in the vice of compassion.
Right. Okay.
And it goes back to like the nurturing side of compassion. So like if you tell your children, you create sort of a fantasy world for your children, for example, where it's like you protect them from hard truths to make their lives easier, and it's part of like the grading them up and prepping them for the world. Like you'll let your kids believe things like you won't tell your kids about death or ugly scenarios or in a way to simplify the world. So there's in compassion this sort of desire to protect people from harsh truths, one could say.
Right.
And that could be taken to an extreme where you're trying to the vice of compassion is then you are protecting people from stories and realities because you want to shape them in a certain direction. So you'll see this in the indoctrination of our kids is an example. It's where the population, right? So this is where censorship starts to rise up.
Right.
And I would say that is a vice of censorship is a vice of compassion. It's like, because they're always sort of citing this good of censorship. We're censoring for the good of the society, or to bring about better people. It's better that people are not exposed to these ideas. Because maybe you and I, as the enlightened people, the adults in the room, the parents, can handle these ideas, but the children, the masses, can't be exposed to these ideas. Right.
Well, I can see it being on both the excesses of wisdom and compassion.
Well, the vices.
What's that?
This is why I think the twin virtues become twin vices. Because it's compassion can't get anything done without wisdom, and wisdom has no place to go without compassion. So when they become vices, they sort of make the other one a vice as well, because it's not regulated or well oriented, and you start sort of oscillating between the extremes. So you'll definitely, and this is where horseshoe theory comes in, where they talk about how the extreme left looks like the extreme right.
Right.
Because you're going to, the destructive power of communism, just resenting everything and wanting to tear everything down, brings about the opportunity for a fascist regime to come in. Like, I would argue that China now is not in any way communist in their extremity. They're, besides the high level of deceit within the society and the delusion, but for primordially, where they're operating purely as a fascist state. Like, everything is for the state, everything within the state, nothing outside of the state. That's what the Chinese are clearly going for at this point.
Right. And they also have it, roughly speaking, they have kind of a free market, if you will, but it's directed by the state, which is economically fascistic, right? They moved away from pure, as every system does, or there's mass starvation, but they moved away from economic communism as well. So
yeah, exactly, because you don't get anything done. Like, if you don't get anything done, because the extreme communism, you can't. You level out everything, and there's no discrimination in the world, and then there's no way to proceed.
Right.
You've torn everything down, and then you may have the desires. Okay, we're going to bring about the utopia now, but if you're going to actually bring about the utopia, you're going to have to actually start planning things out and creating structures, right. And if you have no balancing principle of those structures are going to be fascistic. They're going to be tyrannical. They're going to be ends justifying the means.
Right.
Because you've abandoned the middle ground, the orientation with the good, the positive discourse between compassion and wisdom. Yeah. Right. So there's a lot here, and I don't know how I'm going to actually break this down into a TPVN5 yet, It's going to require a lot more work. We might have 2 writers' rooms on the same
on the same topic.
On the same topic.
Based on what I'm seeing here and the amount that you need to cover, my instinct is to say that these would be broken down into two separate videos.
Yeah, I think there's going to have to be multiple videos. Because I haven't even touched on your question about Two-Face, which is another component of it. It's the two-faced nature of compassion. I talked about a little bit about the deceit. And the desire for order, but I think that the Batman villain Two-Face is actually a real good example of the vice of compassion.
Did you want to flesh that out a little bit? Do we have?
No, I think that's enough for today.
Okay,
but we can definitely flesh that out. Yeah, we can flesh that out at a later date. But I think this is going to be our episode of the Total Perspective Vortex for today, Christian.
Great.
Thanks for hanging out.
I was happy to do it. Remember to share, like, subscribe, but mostly share.
Yeah, super share.
We'll grow.
The sharing is how we grow.
Sharing is caring. I don't know. More platitudes.
Sharing is well-oriented compassion.
That's good. There you go. All right. Cheers.
All right. Take care.